morning, everybody. We're here this morning with the Liberation Formula deep dive. And this is the last video of the 4 videos that we're going to make about the core story. So this is like the very last part. And it is the part that I've said every video was the most important video out of all of these 4 videos, but hopefully you're following us. Hopefully you're watching our videos, and this isn't the last video we'll make, but it's the last video with the core story. Marinna and I are determined to get the word out and help others that are kind of muddling through and trying to find what their mechanisms are and what makes them do what they do. And anyway, yeah, welcome everybody. I'm so glad you're watching.
Everybody. Welcome. Yeah, this piece, I call it the Liberation Formula, and I'll give a little bit of history about it and how it came through, if that works, you think?
Yeah, totally do.
So this one is, I would say, the most important step of the whole core story process, because it's the part we liberate ourselves from, right? It's the piece that helps us. It's a really great way to help us to free ourselves from those limiting belief systems and the mechanisms that we use to try to either cover it up or try to get what we want. And those mechanisms, those actions that we're doing that don't really work, that don't really serve us. So this liberation formula literally is a way that people can unwind that entire process so that they can therefore have true, authentic, deep connections with themselves, with their loved ones, and they can start gaining their flavor of love, whatever that is for them. They can actually start receiving that in their life at the level that they really want to be receiving it. So that's the liberation formula. So a bit about the history of how this came to me, and I think I've talked a little bit about it in other videos, but about 5-6 years, something like it, about 5 years ago, I had a lot of shame show up in my life. And up until that point, I had thought like, oh, I'm really good at feeling emotion. And then this shame comes in as big as it did. And I was like, oh crap, maybe I'm not, right? And what I realized I was doing was I was overriding the emotion with love. So love for me is super easy to feel. But when I was using it to override the emotion, it was making it so I wasn't diving deep into the emotion. So when all this shame came up, it was like, it was news to me, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things, I'm quite connected intuitively, and I feel and experience my guides with me all the time, my spirit guides. And I have one in particular that is very clear in his support for me. And I'm so grateful for him, because he took me at that point and he said, okay, forget all your skills. Don't use any of them except being present with emotion. And I want you to just sit with this shame, and just sit with the shame and sit with the shame and sit with the shame, right? And watch it and watch it and observe it and be with it, and don't run from it. Don't do anything to run from it. And I was taught through him this entire process. So I really feel like this process came from divine inspiration. And that's one of the reasons why I'm giving it, is because I want everybody to be able to be blessed, or as many people who want it, right? To be blessed by this divine inspiration. I don't think I was given this just for me. Hopefully
Right.
it will help many people unwind.
Marinna, that is exactly, I feel like, because you and I have seen how much it's blessed our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And how much happier and liberated I feel going through this process, finding all that shame and where it's coming from, and then doing this liberation formula. I feel like it's the energy to get this out and make these videos.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
that is the momentum behind that. Is we don't have to suffer. That was not part of, I mean, yeah, we're going to have experiences, some that are really tough.
Yeah.
And we all have, but we don't have to be in constant suffering or constant drama triangle,
right?
You know, hero, villain, victim. We get to be liberated from these things. So this is what's so exciting. Yeah.
And we actually have all the skills and tools right within us. I'm not going to give anybody anything that they can't do, right? We have everything within us to be able to liberate ourselves from our own limiting belief systems and our own limiting actions, mechanisms, right?
right.
Yeah,
And don't
go ahead.
I want people that are watching this to also, and maybe you'll agree with me, I don't know, but I want everybody watching this to realize not only do they have their own tools, but they have their spirit guides or Holy
Hmm.
Ghost or God or anything, or even parents or siblings in the spirit world that are helping. I mean, there's so much assistance if we need that or want that.
We're
It's there.
so supported, so
Yeah.
supported. And I personally don't want anybody to just believe what I'm telling them. Take what I'm telling you and experiment with it and test it out and tune in spiritually for yourself and go, does this align with where I'm going in my life? And if it does, use it. I'm here giving it to you. So just a sheer gift of my heart. And
Yeah.
if it doesn't serve you and it doesn't fit, chuck it out the window,
Yeah.
right? Like I don't
Yeah.
want anybody to believe me just because I say it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're your own guru.
Healer. You're your own healer,
You're your
right?
own healer. You're your own guide. You're your own
Assistant.
inspiration. And it's your responsibility to guide yourself, right? And we're all here helping each other.
Yeah.
We're all here
Amen.
helping. And I'm learning from you, and you're learning from me. And so anything that I can do to bless and make another person's journey a little bit easier,
Yeah.
that's what I want. That's what we're
Yeah.
doing these videos for.
And
So,
that's why it's so hard for me to introduce you, because I want to say, you're my comrade, you're my guru, but really you just kind of pointed the way for me, and I have
yeah.
just been going with it too. And you are on a level of understanding that I really am loving and learning from. But at the same time, I don't have you on this pedestal. So it is kind of hard, it's like you're my teacher. So many things, so many
Yeah.
things. So I
Yeah.
love that you don't take offense if people use different terminology, or if it doesn't work for them, like
Yep.
whatever.
Yep. You're your own guru. I'm just
Yeah.
here to support however I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
Awesome. So that's a little bit of the backstory of how this information came to me. Was I literally was guided to walk through this shame piece and liberate myself from the shame was just I see it as almost like a weed, right? So like the shame was like the leaves of the weed, right? And maybe it even blossomed into flowers, and that was my actions. So I'm seeing that that's what the shame was. But underneath the shame, there's a root, and that root is always a belief about something that produced the shame, that produced the results in my life, right? And so when all this shame came up, yeah, I got to sit and be with the shame. But what I started to really see was underneath that, which is what I call the core story, right? It's your core pattern. It's the mechanisms. It's everything you're doing that's causing the shame to even be there in the first place. But I said that slightly off. So it's everything you're believing that's causing the shame to be there. Because an emotion actually sits on top of a belief.
Okay.
So my belief is that there's just something wrong with me, and no matter how hard I try, I can never quite get what I really want. Right? So that was my belief, and it's a lie. It's such a lie. All of these core beliefs are a lie. And then that produced shame for me, and it didn't matter what I said or what I didn't say or what I did or what I didn't do. I had shame. So then the way to pull this root, which is the core story or the core pattern or the belief that I was believing, was I got to go through the shame. I can't avoid the top of the weed to get the root.
Mm.
I have to go face
Mm.
that
I
shame
like that.
in order to get the root of the belief. Okay? So that's why I was invited to sit in this emotion for so long. I sat with it for 2 years. I had a lot of insights, a lot of awareness, a lot of support, a lot of movement during that 2 years. But I was invited to be with it and not try to change that emotion for 2 years. And I grew as a human being so much by just looking at shame, just looking at the shame and facing into that, and then seeing the belief system or the story, right? Seeing the story. And I'm going, oh my goodness, it's the story that's producing the shame. And then pretty soon I started seeing it's not even true. That story's not even true. And then I started to get bigger than it. I started to feel um, greater than my belief system. And then little by little, the belief system started to like, I started to see through it more and more and more. Like, oh, yeah, that's not even true. Oh, yeah, that's not even true. Oh, yeah, that's not even true. And then I got braver and braver and braver. So now shame doesn't, it's not a big monster to me anymore. It's actually my friend. When shame shows up, I go, oh, there's something to be learned here. Okay, let's learn it. Let's
Oh,
look
I
at
love
this.
that.
Let's
Oh,
face
I love
you.
it.
Right.
Yeah,
And it's not scary for me anymore. It's not fun, but it's
yeah.
not scary.
Wow, it's doable.
It's
So,
doable.
so
So this
going
is
back to
what's
the weed,
possible. Hmm?
going back to that weed effect, sometimes having something in your garden, some emotion in your garden is better than nothing, even if it is shame, because what if you had nothing? Like you would have no roadmap to know how you're feeling or what
Oh,
you know what
that's
I'm saying?
yes, that's
And
beautiful, Janet. I don't know if I've ever thought about it quite like that before. It's
and
like,
it helps you appreciate that something is growing. Is it really what I
yes,
want to be growing in the garden? And do I want to spray
right.
chemicals on it and just kill the top of it and not really learn about it?
Yes, it's like all these weeds that are in our garden are actually our gifts.
Yeah.
They're the thing, if we will take a look at it, that will fuel our rocket ship to take off.
Yeah, yeah.
I
It
love
kind of
that.
gives us an idea that, yeah, our soil will grow things. I'm going to pull this weed out. And boy, what if I put some yellow flowers right here or some orange flowers or, you know,
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know. But
I
okay,
love
keep
it.
going. I just had to stop that
I
real quick to
love
just
it.
kind of
Thank
elaborate a
you.
little bit
Yeah,
because these
thank you
emotions
for
are so
that.
good.
I think I will never see it the same again as a result of that. Like I'll see all of our stories now as weeds growing in the garden and opportunities and gifts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
thank you. So so what I was thinking today for this video was
Okay.
to go through the liberation formula and talk about each step. So there's 4 steps to the liberation formula. And and let's just go through each step and let's take each step and like, okay, let's put this in real everyday life. How would somebody do this liberation formula in real everyday life? Okay.
Okay. Yes.
So the first step to the liberation formula is you got to catch yourself in the pattern or the story or the mechanism, right? You got to catch yourself in it and you got to interrupt it. So that's the first step. So
Can
go ahead.
I have a story that can kind of go along with that, that maybe our viewers will kind of put that into everyday practice with
Okay.
this story. So the other day, then my daughter said something like something to the fact that she was going to do something. I think it was move or something. Therefore, she would get more support, and and she was announcing something to me, and I got really quiet, and I didn't give her the reaction that she thought that she would get, and then she says, "Wow, you're sure quiet, Mom. Don't you have any thoughts on that?" And I said, "Oh, I'm thinking." And then I got back with her a couple days later because when she said that, I my core story that I'm not enough or I don't have enough started kicking in at that moment, and the
Mm.
mechanism was going to happen, and it was going to be sarcasm. And so
Mm.
it when she said something that almost made me feel not appreciated, right?
Right.
And so my mechanism started kicking in and I recognized it. And so I went quiet because I was going within and kind of going, oh, wow, wow, wow. I've got these insecurities and these thoughts around what she just said, that information she just gave me. I am taking it personal and it's resonating with me, right? And
Right.
so I was just really quiet. Well, 2 days later, I got back with her and said, Kate, I have this negative story in my brain. And I'm wondering if you're in a place that I could share it with you and get some clarification. And I already kind of knew that it was just a mechanism, but I
Mhm.
wanted to just make sure that I was in fact great support for her. in her time that she needed me. And so I ran it past her and she goes, oh my gosh, I left out part of that. So she was saying, I'm going to move because this, but she meant I'm going to move to this location instead of this other location where no family was at.
Ah.
And I took it to mean she's moving away from me because she needs better support. See? And
Oh.
she could have actually said the whole sentence. She could have actually said, but my story only heard this, right?
Yep.
And
That is
so
such a great example.
my mechanism went poof because I want to be that great mom and great grandma, or not great grandma, but the wonderful grandma. Not yet.
You're not there
Uh,
yet.
nope. So that was really, really funny to watch. I mean, normally I would have said something sarcastic or hurt, like I was hurt,
Yeah,
expecting her to make me feel better.
right.
Anyway, so that's catching it.
Yeah. And then so you actually caught it and interrupted the pattern and you did something different with it and actually had a more authentic, real close connection with your daughter instead of what could have occurred. Like what if you would have done the mechanism? What if you would have come out with a sarcastic response? Then what might have happened?
Hurt feelings. It would probably trigger her core story.
Yep.
At that point, it'd be both of our core stories trying to have a relationship.
Right. Right. Trying
Ugh,
to have a relationship. And that relationship is always, or maybe it's often in drama.
yeah. Or
Right?
not very deep, not
Or
very
it's not,
connected.
yeah, it's not very connected.
Yeah.
It's for the truth is you're not going to get that deep connection that you're both really looking for. The whole
Yeah.
reason you probably started the conversation in the first place was to have this deep connection with each other because
Yeah.
you love each other so much, right? And then a core story gets triggered and you jump into mechanism and then you don't get what you want. But
Yeah.
instead, I love your analogy because instead you caught yourself and you went, oh, and the place to catch yourself for all of our viewers is when you're in your mechanism. This is one of the reasons why we spent so much time talking about the mechanisms, right? And that there's a whole handout on just mechanisms. You got to know what your mechanisms are so that you can actually catch yourself in it.
You have to be aware.
Yeah, you got to be aware. And ultimately, you want to be able to catch yourself like you did before you get in it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because if you can catch yourself before you get in it and you can run yourself through this liberation formula, you will then be able to come back and have the type of connection that you're really looking for with people.
And I'm not saying I don't do it. I'm not saying I catch myself before I take on that emotion or fully think that that's the truth. I'm saying that it's getting better.
Yeah.
It is getting better. It is. I'm noticing, and that's what makes me keep going is I'm seeing the change and I'm noticing that I'm getting a deeper connection with my loved ones.
Uh-huh.
But I want to tell you the very best part of that story when we get down to the questions
Okay.
affirmation.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
Great. Yes, yes, yes. So I love that you bring this up. Like I've had people who really jump in and are working this process with me, right? Like when I first did it, I've been doing this for 5 years now, so I'm getting pretty good at it, right? I don't do it all the time, but I'm getting better at it. And then I started to share it with other people, with you guys, right? A core team of people that I happened to be teaching at the time. And I started wondering, like, oh, are they going to get the results? Are they, and for a time, everybody was kind of just in it, right? Because it's like they're
Yeah.
starting to discover their mechanisms and their patterns. And it's not always a fun process to start recognizing this. But you
It's
guys were
hard.
kind of in it for a little bit. And then 2, 3 months, people started having massive results. Massive results. That's not a long period of time. And yet, if somebody's thinking they're going to have massive results the first day, probably not. So be patient with
No.
yourself. These are
Yeah.
patterns you've had for as long as you've been alive, right?
Yeah.
And it takes a little time. But 2 or 3 months, if you're really, really working with this, is fast. That's a fast. Anybody who's ever done like inner work stuff, 2 or 3 months is massively fast to be able to
Yeah.
start changing patterns, literally to change them. So it's exciting for
So,
me to start seeing these results in your guys' lives too.
yeah. Oh, I love it. And that's the payback for
That is
you is
that
to
is huge
go,
for
okay,
me.
these things are spreading, rippling out. So I was going to say that I wanted to have a special ceremony for when I first realized that those core stories that I've been operating from for 54 years were a lie, and kind of this rebirth or this liberation. But
Uh-huh.
I don't know an exact date because it just started kind of
Uh-huh.
unfolding.
Yep.
Like, be patient with yourselves because it's not like, oh, on August 20th, that's going to be that's going to be a very important date to me because that's when all of this came forth. But it's just slowly, slowly going, oh my gosh, I am not giving up anything but the lies.
Yep.
That's all I'm giving up. It's
And
okay.
you're
I'm
gaining
gaining.
so much.
Yes, I'm gaining so much. And I may not even use the same terminology as the next person in my words, but the feelings are the same.
Yep. Yep. Yay, I
Anyway,
love it. I love it. So the first step, you got to catch yourself in your mechanism. And just that action alone will start to transform everything. Just catching yourself in it, you'll be like, oh, there's a mechanism. Oh, there's another mechanism. There's another mechanism. And sometimes people can get a little paralyzed in this moment because they start to recognize all their actions are coming from mechanism, right? Or a lot of their actions are coming from mechanism. So this might be the most challenging part of the whole thing is this place because people they can get into self-judgment really easy. Like, oh crap, I'm doing it all wrong. And that's not what I'm inviting. What I'm inviting is like, oh, I caught myself in another mechanism. Yay.
celebrating.
Celebrating it because every time you catch yourself in a mechanism, you're interrupting the neural pathway connection that you've had going on for as many years as you've been doing this. And that alone will begin to shift everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
So, Marina, if I start getting discouraged, I think back to why I started looking at this in the first place is my relationships were not 100% pure.
Yeah.
And and then I realized it was my relationship with me. And because I am starting to notice a difference, I keep with it and I
Yeah.
celebrate when I notice
Yeah.
because there's that other option to not notice
Mm-hmm.
and just be blissfully stupid about it and
Except
not
it's not
notice.
blissful. Not
It
really.
isn't blissful. It's miserable. It
Yeah,
is
because
miserable.
you don't have what you really want, which is the close connections with the
Yeah.
people that you truly love.
So the longer you're out of the drama triangle, the more you'll notice when you drop into the drama triangle how uncomfortable that is.
Yes.
It's like having a poopy diaper, walking around with a poopy diaper, and you're just used to it.
You're just used to
Used
it.
to the stink. You're used to your own stink. It
That's such
doesn't
a
smell
great
bad.
analogy. We need to do a whole video on
A
the
poopy diaper.
triangles so that yeah, on poopy diapers. On the triangles so that
Yeah.
people who aren't in your class know what we're talking about.
Oh, true, true. I'm using terminology. I know that a lot of my class will watch this, but
Yes.
yeah,
And that's
the
totally
drama.
fine. That's great. I'm glad you're
Yeah.
using that terminology. It just gives us more of an opportunity to create another video for other people.
Okay.
Yeah, I love
Okay.
it. Yeah, great. So interrupt the pattern, interrupt it here. You've got to be aware of it, recognize it, and interrupt it with your awareness. Okay. That's step number one. Step number two is your loving presence. And step number two, I've actually broken down. We're going to have the handout for anybody who wants to download the handout and follow along with this today. Please do, right? And then you can follow along. You'll know more clearly what we're talking about. So, step number two of the liberation formula is your loving presence. This is the step that creates alchemy. And for anybody who doesn't know what alchemy is, it's like turning lead to gold, right? Is the typical definition for alchemy is turning lead to gold. But in this case, the alchemy is turning our lie into truth, right? That's one way of looking at it. Or turning your actions that don't work into actions that create magic or miracles, right? So you can look at it however you want. It's the alchemy heals the core wound. It literally heals that core wound, helps you to see the truth, and start having your actions come from your essence, from the truth of your being versus the lie that you've made up about yourself or that you're believing about yourself. Okay, so the second step is loving presence. And I've broken this step down into 6 steps. It's actually just one step. Once you get good enough at all of this, it literally becomes one step. It takes anywhere from 30 seconds to 5 minutes sometimes. You know what I'm saying? Like, it really doesn't need to take a long period of time. But when you're just learning, it's like, well, how do I do loving presence, right? How do I do that? So I've
Yeah.
broken it up into 6 pieces so that you can take each piece and practice each piece. And then by the time you get to the 6th one of practicing it, it becomes all one step. Okay, so I'll walk everybody through these 6 pieces. So the first one is you got to face it. So when you've interrupted your mechanism, inevitably there's going to be an emotion. So in your experience with your daughter, there was an emotion, right?
Yeah.
Like, you felt triggered and you're like,
Yeah.
ouch, right?
That's why I
There's
went
an
quiet.
emotion. So I'm going
Yeah.
to be quiet. I'm not going to come back with a response. So I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to start to face it. Okay. So what you're facing is the emotion. Like in my analogy, I was facing the shame. You want to face whatever it is, emotion that came up. And we've done other videos on emotion. If you haven't watched them, go watch them, because I'm not going to dive real deep into emotion this time and why it's good to face it. We're just going to talk about facing it. Okay. So the emotion lives in our bodies. So I suggest people putting their head down so that they can really start watching the emotion. Okay. So you got to turn and face it. That's step number 1. Face it. So then the second step is to breathe it. Okay. So what happened to breathe it? I've done
Okay.
these in like little catchy thing to help it easier to remember, right? So I've got face it, breathe it, feel it, receive it, love it, and honor it. Those are the 6 pieces or steps. So the first one is face it, right? So you're facing the emotion. The second one is breathe it. So you want to start your breath. Okay. Most people, when they're avoiding an emotion, will either bring their breath up into their chest and they'll do shallow breathing, which triggers fight or flight, or they will hold their breath altogether. And this is a way we try to control emotion. So you want to make sure to start breathing deep in your belly, relaxed, while you're feeling this intense emotion. Okay, so now you're looking at it, you're breathing, and then the third one is to feel it. And we've done a whole video on feeling it too. So feel free to go watch that one as well if you want. In essence, though, feeling it is observing, getting really good at observing the sensations of the emotion. So your emotion always has sensation attached. So, for example, if you're dealing with some sadness, you're going to probably feel some sensation in your chest or your throat, maybe your face, right? That's going to be like the general areas for sadness to be felt. And you're going to feel sensation, and that sensation might be heaviness. It might be tightness, like a tightness in your throat. Maybe you're like trying to hold it back by swallowing, I'm sure we've all seen people like that, right? So if you can start observing the sensations, the tightness, the desire to swallow, the heaviness in your chest, right? If you can start observing the heaviness behind your eyes or whatever sensation that's going on, that is feeling it. That is your presence. That's bringing the presence to it. Okay. So you want to now face it, put your head down, look at it, look at the emotion, breathe into your belly, and then be observant of whatever it is, whatever the sensation is that's going on. Now, here's where somebody can either drown in the emotion, or they typically will either run or drown from in the emotion. Okay. Neither are being present with the emotion. Some people are like, well, because I'm crying, I'm feeling the emotion. Not necessarily. If you are observing it and being present with it, that's when you're feeling it. If you are lost in the emotion because it's so big and you're drowning in it, you're not being present with it. And you're doing kind of the opposite of somebody who runs from it. And you're not present. So go ahead and still observe and observe and observe and observe whatever's going on in your body at the sensation level. And that's feeling it. Okay. Are there any any thoughts or questions you want to add at this point, Janet?
I was just going to mention, and this really isn't important at all, but on the handout, you do face it, you have face it, feel it, breathe it, receive it, love it, and honor it.
Okay.
But so you did the order a little bit different, but I don't
I
think that.
did. I'll need to edit that handout
Okay.
because I have changed it. In the beginning, I did it
Okay.
this way, but I have changed it because the breath I really want to come first before you start observing.
Okay. So
So
my handout it needs updated.
yes, I need to update it.
Okay.
So we'll put the updated handout in this video
Okay.
for people.
Awesome.
I'll get that done.
I'll make a note to that.
Yeah, and then I'll send it to you too.
Awesome.
So you
Okay,
have the
thank you.
updated version.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So
it's
I
important to breathe before you start observing the emotion,
oh,
because if you're holding your breath, you're probably not going to have as much sensation,
okay.
right? But if you
Yeah.
start with your breath, you start looking at, oh, what am I feeling? And then you start your breath, then the breath alone helps that emotion to start passing through the body. And then that will
Okay.
bring up more sensation for you to observe and be present with.
So let me ask you a question. If you mentioned don't drown in it, would that be considered, um, I know this isn't even possible really, maybe, but too emotional or depressed, or like what is drowned in it look like? If I was
Yeah.
drowned in an emotion, what would I be like?
It's really hard for somebody outside of you to know what that looks like. It's more of an internal thing. Like I could be crying my eyes out and fully present, and somebody outside could think I'm drowning in it. So
Okay.
please don't point the finger at somebody else because you think they're drowning in it, because they might not be. It's really an internal process. And it's more
Ah,
about, am I observing this, or am I gone or so deep in it that I've lost myself?
okay, let me ask you one more question. Ooh, I think I'm getting to the real of it. So if I think I am sad versus I am feeling
Yes.
sadness.
That's such a great way to look at it.
Okay. So
Yes.
instead of I am depressed, I am feeling some sadness. Like
Yes.
I am
Yes. Yes.
feeling this. I'm noticing this. Okay.
Yep. If that's really, really great. Thank you for saying that. So if you have made the emotion your identity, right? Like,
Ooh,
I
yeah.
am sad, I am depressed, I am angry, I am these things. We've taken them and made them our identity. And the truth is it's not
Yes.
who we are. Yeah.
No.
We might be having the feeling of it. And so that's a really great distinction. Like if you're lost in it, if you're drowning in it, you've become the emotion,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. How
Instead
can you
of just the
climb out?
observer of it.
Right. Okay.
I love that. Thank you, Janet. All right. So the fourth step is to receive it. So when we receive something, let's see, how can I say this? Can we actually receive something we're in resistance to? I don't think so, right? Like, can we fully receive it? And I'm talking about receiving this energetically, receiving this fully. If we're going, no, don't
Mhm.
want it. I don't want that shame. I don't want that sadness. I don't want that fear, right? I don't want it. How could we receive it? So this step is in here because it really takes the being present with emotion to a whole new level. Okay. So if I can now receive the emotion into every cell of my body, I got to let go of the judgment that it's bad, because I'm not going to want to breathe something bad into every cell of my body.
Like a chemical or
Like a
whatever.
chemical, right? Exactly. So emotion is energy that's in our body and it wants to flow. So the moment we breathe it in to every cell of our body, it can now flow. There's no resistance. We're not putting up walls to that emotion. We now are like, right? And we're letting that sadness or the fear or the whatever it is that's going on, we're literally breathing it into every cell of our being. And it changes. I know it's going to be weird for people to think of like, what? I have to receive something that feels so uncomfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you can receive it, it changes everything, 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 everything. The amount of time that it takes for that emotion to flow through the body decreases rapidly, like so significantly. It
And
decreases.
then it maybe won't get stuck in the back as a backache or kidney problem or whatever, right?
Yep, exactly. But you're
Okay,
not doing it to make it go fast. You're doing it to receive it. Because if
okay,
you're trying to receive it from a place of, okay, I'm going to receive this so this feeling can hurry up and go away, you're still in resistance to it.
yeah,
So
yeah,
receive it to receive it. And this is a slightly more advanced step, right? So if you're not there yet, don't try to force yourself to be there. Do the first steps, the first three first. Okay, do the first three, the facing it, the breath, and the being present with it. Okay,
okay,
when you can do those three, then receiving it's going to be much easier.
okay.
Okay, so a little example, like I was dealing with some anxiety at one point. When I learned this piece, I was dealing with some anxiety. Excuse me. And I was just trying to deal with it the best that I could, right? With the skills that I had. And my guide, he whispered in my ear and he said, go outside and breathe the anxiety in as if it's the most beautiful sunrise in the world. Right? And
Yeah,
something
wow.
magical happened. And I did. And I walked out on my back porch and I'm like, and I started breathing the anxiety into every cell of my body. And what happened is I got bigger than the anxiety. I got bigger than the fear that was in my body.
Hmm,
And it was like that, it was almost felt like the fear shrunk, but I think what happened is I got bigger, therefore the fear didn't feel so big. I
hmm.
think that's what happened.
That
Right,
is very interesting.
it was amazing, it was amazing. So that was the beginning of learning this, and I won't go into all the others, but because I had multiple learnings around this piece.
Yeah,
So I'm just going to invite people, practice receiving the emotion.
okay.
Okay. Um, Step four in this. Four? Did I do four already? Five. I think we're on five already, right?
We're
Loving
on
it,
5. Yep,
loving it.
yep,
Okay. So the
yep,
fifth
love
one
it.
is to love it. Okay. So the love it literally is just bringing love to the whole thing. This is the love part of the presence. So the first four steps are all about presence. You're being present with it. This step is you bring the love in. You bring the experience of love to the whole situation. So
I
go ahead.
okay. I hope I don't interrupt the story you're thinking of.
No, go for it.
Okay, so when I realized I was on the when my story was coming up pretty big when when I talked about facing it. When I understood that what my daughter was coming from in that story, where she was coming from, and then I also explained I started having compassion from where I was coming from instead of feeling bad about myself being so immature to think that that was something or that was about me. I
Right.
said, I said, I bet you can. I said something like this. I bet it just felt like as a mom that I was not appreciated, I think that that is loving, having compassion for those stories that come up, even though they're ridiculous and they're lies. Like, who has compassion for the lies you create in your own little mind? But
Right.
having compassion for it, I feel like is a huge part of it.
Hmm. So huge. This is the alchemy. This is the ultimate alchemy. So presence and love is the alchemy. It's what heals everything. It's how I've healed trauma is the through presence and love together, right? If I can sit with myself when I'm feeling trauma or fear or whatever's going on in presence and love, I can heal it.
Yeah.
So that might be challenging for somebody who's dealing with trauma right now and they've never practiced this. But once you practice it on smaller things, you can use it on the bigger things like trauma and
Yeah.
it will work magically. Okay, so dang it, there was something I wanted to say.
Oh man, I shouldn't have interrupted
No,
you.
no, no, no. It was because something I wanted to say from what you said that was felt really important to say.
Just having the compassion and not causing yourself more
Okay.
shame.
Yes, that's what it was.
Okay.
Okay, so literally, not just figuratively, but literally, you have an inner child aspect of yourself that is still in that moment of childhood when you made up that story, right? Or when you started believing the story. There's a child aspect that's still there and stuck in the past.
Yeah.
And that child wants to be with you. And so every time that we are able to bring love to these moments, to these situations, we're literally bringing love to that little child that got stuck back there in the lie.
So, so I have always been annoyed with that healing the child within or but it's so true. We're reparenting ourselves.
Yes. Like, I know, like, when I look into myself, I'm like, I still feel that little child. I still feel like I'm a little kid sometimes, right? There's still a part of
Yeah.
me that has that innocence, that
Yeah.
purity, that joy, and I think that's such a big part of our essence. But where I think it can get unhealthy is if we get stuck, like say some trauma or some big experience happened when we were little, which happens pretty much to every one of us at some point in our childhood, and
Right.
we start believing lies about ourselves, okay? And the
Yeah.
lie about ourselves, we kind of stick ourselves in the past with that. And then we constantly are going back to the past and being triggered, and it's that little child part of us that's being triggered. So when we can go back and love that little part of us that believed that lie, we can heal it.
Wow. So I totally agree with you. I totally agree that we are literally revisiting the wounded child
Yes.
over and over. And I have seen an adult male throw a fit that I just immediately saw him as a 2-year-old, not
Yeah.
being heard, not understood, throwing a fit.
Yeah. And now he's
Like,
just in a great big body where he can cause damage. But the truth
yes.
is he's a hurt little boy, and that little
Yep.
boy has never had the opportunity to heal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Until he
And the
does.
little and that adult that's throwing the big fit is probably not listening to himself.
Yes.
Truthfully, it's
Yes.
I mean, yeah, it's good to give people space and listen to them, but it's
Right.
also even better if they can listen to themselves.
That's where the
And
magic happens, is when you
yeah.
can catch yourself, even if like after you've thrown the fit, right? After you've thrown the fit, or after you've had the fight, or after you've done whatever, right? If you can catch yourself in that moment and go, oh, I was in my mechanism. Oh, I was believing the lie. Oh, this is my little
Mhm.
child that feels hurt, right?
Yeah.
That feels hurt. And then you can go back and you can give that little child the love you're trying to get from the other person in the relationship, right? Or you're trying to get from money, or that you're trying to get from God,
Respect
or that you're
or
trying
yeah.
to get from whoever you're trying to get this love from. If you can then turn and give that love to that little child inside of you, that compassion, that kindness, that nurturing to that little
Mhm.
child, that's when you heal it. That's when you heal the
That's
trauma.
so true. And only you can do that.
Only you can do that. There's no amount of me trying to do that for you or doing that for you that could ever do it. It has
Yeah.
to come from you.
And I hear so many therapists and counselors and coaches say, "Oh, if that person caused you trauma or if you feel triggered around them, you have boundaries and you keep them out of your life." And to me, it's like, thank God we have triggers and so that we can kind of be aware and go, "Oh my gosh, I wonder what's going on inside to trigger that in me."
Yes. Oh, it's such a gift. The
Yeah.
triggers are a gift. Yeah. There's a little story with one of my daughters, my youngest daughter. Okay. So I had 5 kids and I had them all really close together, and I was pretty overwhelmed as a parent. And my daughter was 3 at the time. And I had thought I loaded all my kids in the car to take them to school. But I didn't realize until
Mhm.
was pretty close to being at school that my youngest 3-year-old was not with me. And
Ooh.
I had left her on sitting on the front porch step.
I don't know what parent has not left their kid at some period, sometime. It sucks. I'm
That,
sorry.
of course, it devastated me, right? And I'm
Yeah.
calling people who live closer to go over and be with
Oh,
her once I recognized it. But
oh,
she has had trauma from that moment in her
yeah.
life. And I was having a really great conversation with her just the other day. Like, I have taken ownership of that situation with her. I have I've apologized. I have
Mm.
tried to make it better. I've talked with her. I've done everything I possibly can to heal that in her on my end. And she still has the trauma. And
Oh,
so we had this conversation together where she was able to now get, and it felt like one of those moments, where when you speak, it's not you speaking, like somebody's speaking through you, like
yeah,
divine is speaking through you. And that was
totally.
one of these conversations that I just had with her. And it was this basically, honey, you left yourself sitting on that doorstep. And I can apologize all I want, but nobody's it's not going to heal. She's going to stay sitting on that front porch step until you go as the adult and tell her she did nothing wrong. It was not her
Wow. Okay, I'm having a hard time wrapping around that.
fault.
So,
Well, I've done everything I can to help her heal, but
yeah.
right? But she
So she,
hasn't been able to heal from it because she hasn't gone back and given herself that love.
wow.
She also left herself in that moment, and she started believing a lie that she had done something wrong. It was her fault that I left her.
Or she wasn't loved.
She wasn't loved, she wasn't noticed, she wasn't seen, whatever her stories were, right?
Yeah.
Somehow she started believing that. And when she believed that lie, she left herself.
Oh, she abandoned herself.
She then abandoned herself. And so
Oh
now
my
the key is for her now as the adult to go back to that little child and love her and let her know that is a lie. That's not true. You believed that. It was not your fault. You did everything
wow.
you knew how to do to be in that car. She was
Yeah.
3, right? And
Dang.
so now she gets to go back and she gets to love that little girl better. And she's the only
Wow.
one that can do that. I can't do that for her. I've tried. Believe me, I've tried and I can't.
I mean, you could go with her, but just wait in the car.
And I do. I walk by her side and I hold her
Yeah.
hand and I encourage her, but only
Yeah.
she can do that work.
Yeah.
And that's
Wow.
how it is for every single one of us. We have to be willing to go back and give ourselves the love, the attention, the connection, the nurturing, whatever it is that we're looking to get from somebody else. We have to give it to ourselves. And when we do, we heal that wound. We heal that wound. And then what happens magically in relationship is it's like the mirror starts changing. The relationship she can have with me now, after going back and loving that, is going to be completely different than the relationship she was going to have with me if she didn't. She's going to
Right.
forever attract people who abandon her, because
Wow.
that's what the mirror has to show her, is that she's abandoned herself.
So when you first said that, the first instinct in my mind is, no, don't put that on her. She was just a little girl. But you took full accountability for years and plus some. Like,
Yeah.
and then you learned to go in and have compassion for that mistake.
I've had to have compassion for me
Yes,
with that
that's what I'm
mistake.
saying.
Yes.
Right. For you, and have to have compassion that you were, it was amazing you were able to get in the car with the kids. You did get in the car and start the car and drive down the road, right?
Right.
So
Right.
you had compassion and understanding. You looked at a fuller picture than just mom drove off without me.
hmm
When it's so black and white and we don't see that full picture, we don't have the understanding.
We don't have the understanding, and then we inevitably leave ourselves. And this is actually perfect. This is not a mistake. I don't think that this is the way that it happens in our psyche, right? Like, I
Yeah.
think that this happened for my daughter because she chose to take on this abandonment pattern, right? So that
Yeah.
therefore, when she started into the dating world and she started experiencing men as abandoning her, she
Yeah.
could be like in so much pain that she'd go, oh, what is this about? Right. But her
Wow.
soul also surrounded her with the support she needed, right? Me as her mom and other people in her life that can support her to go, look within, look within, look within. It's always there. That's where her healing has to happen. Now,
Wow.
it's lovely when our parents or whoever caused the pain, right? When whoever that was can go and apologize, there's a certain amount of something that does heal. I won't
Okay,
I
so
won't lie to you, but you're
right.
never going to get to that core until you also join yourself. You also reunite with yourself.
Wow, this is just huge, huge, huge. I love it. I love it. Okay. Yeah, it's almost like an individual work on this earth
Yeah.
experience.
Yes.
And
And this will probably be the piece when she gets this piece that fuels her rocket ship and she takes off the biggest.
wow.
Like
Yeah.
I personally think we set this up before we even come here, but that's my personal belief. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if she set it up and said, "Hey mom, would you leave me on the front doorstep when I'm 3 so that therefore I can like do this and this and this and learn all this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think I'll do that because then I can learn this and this and this too."
And you didn't realize how bad that would torture you as a
Oh,
mother.
no.
But that almost sounds like the book called The Soul in the Sun, or
Uh-huh.
is that the name of that book?
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Where
by
you
Neil
kind of
Donald Walsh.
choose, like, yeah, 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 you choose the people that can give you the best, deepest, richest experience.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's an ex-husband or a, you know, somebody that abused,
Abusive
somebody that
parent
abused.
or
Mhm.
sibling or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yep. But this is also her fuel. So I don't want to ever lead people to think, oh, I'm a victim here. Ever. You are
Yeah,
not a
nobody
victim.
is.
We
Oh,
can
it's
now
such a
go back
rich,
and, like you were saying, we can now go back and reparent ourselves.
yeah.
In fact, it's vital that we do that. It's vital that we go back and give ourselves the love that we feel like we didn't get from our parents, or the attention or the presence or whatever it is we really, really want to have. So this love piece is huge. Huge, 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 huge.
Mm, mm,
Okay, so now let's get to the final piece of the loving presence step, which is to honor it. This is like the perfect lead in. If we can look at these experiences in our life as sacred, if we can honor them as sacred, right? This
mhm,
is the fuel that's going to fuel my daughter into her greatness, right?
mm,
My childhood, that was so challenging for me. There was so much abuse, right? I now
mm.
can look back at it and go, "Ah, my childhood was sacred. That was sacred ground I was living in. I didn't know it. It didn't feel sacred. It felt
Yeah,
stinky, right?
yeah.
But I've now been able to see how the actions of my parents and my siblings and all of that stuff that happened at home actually fueled me to be where I am today.
It's so rich. So
It's
such a rich experience.
it is. And so I'm asking people to just in the moment when you get triggered, right? And you are doing walking yourself through these steps, just look at the trigger as a gift,
Yeah.
as sacred. The trigger is sacred. And if you can do that, that's like the cherry on top. That's the extra. If you can't do that, don't push yourself to try to do that. Don't push yourself to get there until you're there. But if you can, add that little cherry of like, this is a sacred experience. Boy, does it hurt, but man, it's sacred because it's going to launch my rocket ship. It can help.
Mm. And who's to say that when we're facing into some old stories, who's to say that we didn't, inherit that that story through like a DNA connecting receptor type of, I mean, who's to say that we didn't inherit that? Because I know that I'm a lot like my mother, and she was
Mhm.
a lot like her mother, and I'm dealing with some of the same emotions and the same mechanisms.
Mhm.
And how cool would it be to honor that and go, "Oh, I get to be the one to unhook this or to
Yeah.
break this chain, so to speak.
Mhm.
I get to be the one." So it's an honor to do this for all of you and me,
Right. And your
right?
children, because you're breaking the chain
Yeah,
so that it can
yeah,
therefore not continue on. The pattern can be broken. I know. So
yeah.
what a gift. We were
What a
probably all
gift.
up there, wherever we were in
Yeah.
spirit, and they said, "Okay, who wants to take this one on?" And I'm like, "Oh, pick me. I want to go to that
No
piece of
problem.
family because I'm going to
No
get this and
problem.
this, and I want to be the strong one that helps break it all for everybody."
Yeah,
Who
yeah.
knows? Who knows? I
Who
may
knows?
I'm
Like,
making shit up right now, but it's kind of a fun thought.
it kind of makes me wonder how big the picture really is,
Yeah,
because now we're opening up this picture that I used to think was a curse, or something I have to get over, and something I just want to, you know,
yeah,
and now I'm looking at it as a gift. So, that's it's a complete turnaround. It's a
yeah,
complete change of thought.
yep,
It's no longer an evil emotion or an evil thing or anything that's negative.
right.
It's a
It now
gift.
all becomes a gift. Everything becomes a gift. Your pattern becomes a gift. Your mechanism, catching yourself becomes a gift. You're learning from it. You're growing from it. You're expanding. You're
Yeah,
becoming the person you were meant to be because of these things. And so, what a gift!
yeah, yeah. I love it.
Awesome. Okay. So so that wraps up the second step of the liberation formula. It's a big one. Again, I'll say eventually it will come into, as you practice more, it'll literally come into one step. You'll just do this automatically. It'll be a lot easier, and you'll just be like, and it'll happen. But until then, it's going to take some practice. Like, I've had a lot of questions from different people, and they'll be like, well, what if I'm like standing at the stove and I'm making dinner and I get triggered? you know? And I'm like, well, you can do the process with your eyes open. Just do it while you're standing there at the stove, right? Or if a child's trying to get your attention and they're triggering you, you know what I mean? Like, find ways to do this in whatever level you can. Like, one of the moms that contacted me at one point, she's like, I can get through maybe one or two of the steps and then I have to come back to it because she's got kids that are interrupting her and all kinds of stuff, right? And I'm like, great, do whatever you can. Do it in the way that you can do it. Do it in a way that you will stick to, right?
Yeah.
Do it in your way, not my way. Do it
Mhm.
in your way, right? However you need to do it.
Okay, I had a thought. What about somebody jotting down or taking note when they're triggered, or when they feel that story coming up, or the core story coming up? How about they jot down or notice, when I meditate in the morning, I'm going to go to this emotion, into this spot,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
then just robotically carry on with making supper. And would that work, or does it need to be
Um,
done right in the
Mhm.
moment?
It's best if it can be done right in the moment because that's when the feeling will be the most
Mm,
present for you to be present
mhm,
with, right? So
mhm.
ideally in the moment. But if the moment like doesn't allow, then definitely go back to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's better than nothing.
It's better than nothing, for sure. And I've done that a handful of times.
Okay. So we're on the question affirmations.
Okay, so we're on step 4 of the liberation formula. We decided beforehand we're gonna do a whole video on this. So I'm just gonna give you a brief synopsis of what this is about. And because this is such a powerful, powerful step. So the last 2 steps of the liberation formula are not, they're not about the alchemy. They're not about healing. They're not about anything like that. What they're about is how do I have my actions come from my essence instead of mechanism, right? So these
Mm,
last 2 steps are really about how do I move forward into life from a way that works, in a way that works, in a way that actually produces results that I want instead of results I don't want. Because when you're in your mechanism, you're doing all these actions and they produce the results you're not really satisfied with, oftentimes. It's like more surface relationships, or little bits of money instead of lots of money, or whatever it is. You're only producing half the results that you could maybe produce if you're coming from your essence. When you're in your essence and your action comes from essence, oh my goodness, dynamite, magic. Things just happen around you effortlessly. There's no trying involved. It just happens. So the question is like, how can we get there? How can we make sure we're coming from essence versus mechanism? Okay, so that's what these 2 last steps are about. So I have question affirmations as the 4th step.
mm, mm.
Now, I'm not a big one for affirmations myself. I mean, for some people, they seem to know how to make them work, but I've never been able to make affirmations work. And the reason is because my brain doesn't believe me just telling it something. Like if I say, my life is amazing and I've got all this money in the bank, when the bank doesn't prove that, my brain comes in. I've got a real skeptical side of my brain, and it comes in and goes, "No, you don't, you big liar." Right? You got da 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 da, right? And that's the way my brain is. So then if I try to do affirmations, it feels like I'm trying to talk my brain into believing something that doesn't feel true. And that's just
Right.
always been hard for me. Some people can do it, not me. And I think part of the reason why is because this is a piece that I get to bless people's lives with, these questions, right? So a question. So okay, let's go to the statement. So my life is amazing and I have all this money in the bank, okay? Versus, oh, how amazing could my life be and how much money could I actually have in the bank? Right? The
Right.
difference is my brain automatically goes with the question, my brain goes, oh, what's possible? Instead of trying to point out to me all the reasons why it's not that way, it goes, "Ooh, what is possible? How?" And it literally gets on my team and starts putting out there and like wondering and all this fun stuff. Okay, so that's the first amazing thing about asking a question. Get your brain on board so you're not fighting. Secondly, energetically, what a question does is it creates a vacuum in space. So you say, how amazing is my life and how much money could I actually have in the bank? Creates this openness, so long as we don't answer it ourselves. It
Mhm.
creates this vacuum of like, and it starts to pull, energetically pull that answer towards you in the form of life showing up as amazing and money being in your bank. Okay, so that's what it does energetically. Did you have a thought?
Yeah, I had a thought. There was a quote, and I was trying to see who said this quote, but it was just a question opens up the mind versus a statement closing the mind. Or
Mhm.
I might have that let's see, a question opens the mind, a statement close. I think that's what it was.
Mhm.
But I really feel my mind just relax when I say, "Ooh, I wonder
Yeah.
how." So I was going to tell you the rest of that story with my daughter is we started talking about how close we were and how it is going to be hard when she moves and it is going to be, how can I support her and all these things, and I just started going into fear immediately, like, just, I'm going to miss her, I'm not going to be there for her. And then I'm like, whoa, 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 and I started asking the wonder questions. And how soon do you think I'll be able to save enough money in my account to go fly to see you and be there for you? And how many wonderful videos will I get from you? Different things like that. So I think those wonder questions are seriously just seeing the picture bigger, seeing it without the fear, without the everything. There's so many possibilities out there. I have always believed that God has so many blessings, and I think sometimes He's just pouring them down on us. And sometimes we have an umbrella and we don't want to feel the blessings, and we don't know we are protecting ourselves from
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
from those blessings.
Yep. Yeah. Questions help you to enter the world of all possibility. And I love them for that reason. It's just like you enter this realm of, oh, anything's possible. And when we think anything's possible, right? So now
Right,
we're in the world
right,
of all possibility. There's also this other quote, I'm sure people will recognize it. It goes, ask and you shall receive.
right, right,
It didn't say,
yeah.
say a statement and you will receive. It said, ask and ye shall receive.
Ask a
Right?
question.
And there's, I don't
Yeah.
know the number because whatever, but it's like says it so many times in the Bible, like so many times. Asking you shall receive, asking you shall receive, right? And literally, this is like a magic wand. If we will ask, we're going to receive, and we're going to ask the answer comes back to us literally in the way we ask the question. So if I ask the question of like, why is my life shit? I'm going to get
That's
more, right? I'm going to get
yeah,
more of my life being shit.
yeah, yeah,
But if I were to ask the question of like, ooh, how amazing can my life actually be? Then
yeah.
what's going to be coming back to me is that answer in the form of life coming back amazing. There's a couple of key pieces here. One is that you cannot be attached to what it looks like when it comes back. Because if you feel and we'll go into like when we do a whole hour of this, I would like to really dive into this piece because this one trips people up. So they'll be like, okay, I'm all on board. Let's ask questions, right? And so then people start asking questions, but inevitably, as human beings, we want to go, okay, I want that to look this way, and we grab a hold of what we think it should look like, and that stops the magic. Totally stops the magic.
Can I ask you a question? Are you saying don't be specific about our wonders and
No,
our questions?
you can be specific about your questions. That's not exactly what I'm saying. What I'm saying is don't be attached to what it looks like when it
Okay.
actually comes back. Okay. So like if I say, well, maybe I am saying don't be quite as specific. Like I wouldn't put out there like, okay, how can I have a big, beautiful white house with black shutters and a fence around it, right? Instead, I would ask something like, oh, what house is out there that's going to nurture and support me in the best possible way, right? So that's
Okay.
more how I would design a question, because the house that has the black shutters and the fence that I'm looking for may not be the house that feels fulfilling. I might get
So
it.
so we're maybe asking for an experience or a feeling versus I'm going to get this amount of money in my bank account. I'm going to fly out on Southwest Airlines. Maybe how many wonderful, peaceful, fun moments can we still have together when you live clear there and I live here?
Yeah. So
So it's
here's
more about that.
yes, it's more about that. And the reason is because we're all looking for a feeling. That's why we
Yeah.
think we want the trip
Yeah.
or the money or the
Right.
relationship or the whatever. We're wanting a feeling. And so the truth is we're human beings in a human existence and we cannot see the full picture. But our soul or God or divine or whatever larger thing out there can
Yeah.
see the larger picture, right? Has our best interests at heart, and it will come back to us in a better way than we could have created ourselves.
That is so true.
Okay,
I know
so
that.
for an example,
Yeah.
is like 6 months before I actually met the man I'm married to, I met a man who fit the picture of everything I thought I wanted. He fit everything. Okay. We dated for about 6 months. And what I realized in that 6 months is that even though I thought I had what I wanted, it wasn't what I wanted. I didn't realize this until after this. No, this wasn't 6 months before I met the man I married. This was a year and 6 months because that experience what taught me so much. And I went, oh, I don't even know what I want. Like this was not it. Right.
Wow.
And so then
Yeah.
I took a year to really just love myself and be in this relationship with myself and build this really beautiful. I'd already been working on this, but I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a year and I'm going to build this. Right. And
Yeah.
then I met the man that I'm actually married to. And he didn't fit very many of my, I mean, he fit some of my pictures, right?
Yeah.
But he didn't fit my picture that I always saw for myself. But yet our relationship is way more fulfilling, way deeper, way more, you know what I mean? And so it's
Yeah.
like there's something out there, some part of us or God or spirit or whatever you want to call it all, that can see the picture much better than us. And so
Yes.
if we can ask those questions for what we want, but also let
Mhm.
go of needing it to look a certain way, what's going to come back is it's going to come back in a much better way than we could possibly ever have known for ourselves. And it's going to be way more deeply fulfilling.
I'm giving that lots of thought
This one is a little challenging for some people, right? Like
that are
some people,
controlling,
yeah,
especially the people that are controlling, because like I want to tell God exactly what I would like to
yeah,
see.
yeah, because we think we know what we want, but the truth
Yeah.
is, we don't.
Yeah. It's so true.
We don't.
It is so
We want a
true.
feeling. We may know the feeling we want, but we don't really know what's going to come outside of us to match that feeling, right? And we really want that feeling. So asking questions, like ask as many questions, have fun with them, ask detailed, ask not detailed, whatever you want to do, have fun. That's key. You got to have fun
Okay.
with this for it to work. If you're asking questions because you're trying to get something, it probably won't work because fun is the magic. Play with this, have fun with this. That is the magic that calls it forth. Okay.
Hey, I just had a thought, Marina.
Yeah.
So is it kind of like Christmas and you want something? Let's say I want a basketball hoop or whatever, and I want that and I want that, and I even know what brand and everything. And I open my present in the morning. I've been waiting. I've seen the present. It looks like it's the right size to be a basketball hoop or whatever. I open it Christmas morning and it's not a basketball hoop, but it's something else that I could really, really love and use. Are you saying the excitement needs to be receiving the gift or receiving it's that feeling that we're getting, not if we might miss the feeling if we get too set on the picture or what it is.
Yes. Okay. So I'll use your analogy to give you an
Okay.
example of how it works.
Okay.
Okay. So you get excited about the questions. That's where the excitement comes in, right? Because you're now entering the world of possibility. Like,
I wonder what
anything's
it's going to be.
possible.
Yeah.
And let's say you did have your eyes set on the basketball and a specific kind and all of this kind of stuff, right? But you also decided, I'm going to let go of whether I even get a basketball or not.
Mm-hmm.
What divine has planned for you is they'll give you the whole basketball court. And that's the difference. You didn't even ask or know you wanted the basketball court. You thought you just wanted the basketball.
Yeah.
Right? But what divine knew you wanted was the whole court and the basketball.
Oh, I love that.
And if you can let go of having to have it fit your pictures, what's even better can now come in.
Yeah.
What aligns with you, what's going to actually satisfy your heart, is actually what's going to come in.
And there's no limit.
You're going to get more than what you asked for.
Yeah. Wow. I just love that. Oh, I love that. That is wonderful.
Yeah.
We limit ourselves. We do it to
ourselves. We do it to ourselves by thinking we can control our lives. The truth is we can't control it anyway.
Yeah.
We try, but we can't. Not really. Yeah. And by our controlling, we're limiting so much that we are missing out on what's possible.
So true.
Yeah. Okay. So questions, ask questions, lots of questions, have fun with them, play with them. How this is used in the liberation formula is, let's say you've now, felt the feelings, you were present with it, you loved yourself, you went in and talked to that little person's heart in there, and you did the process. Now you're into the place where you're like, okay, now what? You've interrupted the pattern. I don't want to go back to that same old pattern. So now what? This is where you're going to pull your questions out, and you're going to ask questions such as, oh, how can I come from essence in this moment, right? What wants to happen now? How does it get better than this? What if it were impossible to believe the lie, right? Who am I beyond all the made up stories I have about myself, right? Like ask questions. I'm currently in process of creating a card deck, like an oracle card deck or whatever, for question affirmations.
Nice.
That they can pull out after and just have a whole deck of cards for questions they could ask themselves.
Because it really gets your creative juices flowing, and then you can make your own according to what your heart's desire.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this is how you would use the questions, and the questions really move you into that place of all possibility. It aligns with that innocence of a child, that playfulness of a child, that kids are naturally born with. Anything is possible, right? And so asking questions aligns you back with that place. And so then from that place, we do our fourth step, and we ask one specific question, and that is, what is the next action that I could take right now that would move me forward, right? Or what is that action from essence that I could take that would move me forward? And then that when you listen for the answer, you don't take action until you listen and you get the answer. So let's say, for an example, that you were going to make a meal for a friend, and you caught yourself and you're like, oh man, I'm doing this to try to get love, right? To try to get approval, to try to feel like I'm a good person. And you catch yourself in that mechanism and you go, Okay, I'm not going to do that. And you interrupt it and you do this process instead. Then you ask the question at the very last, you go, what is the action that's going to be from my essence, right? What is that action? You may get the response coming back of like, yeah, go make that meal for that friend. It might be the very same action, okay? But
Right.
now that same action is coming from essence versus mechanism. You're not doing it to get love, you're doing it because you're inspired to do it. Period.
Yeah.
Completely different come from, okay? Now you also might get the response of like, yeah, call that friend up and just talk to them instead of making them a meal. Or
Right.
maybe this friend really needs space.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Maybe they don't
Yeah.
want you showing up their house with a meal,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? You're going to get the inspired action. And when the inspired action comes through, that's when our actions create magic. That's when all these questions we've been asking, now spirit can use you to actually create the magic in your life because you're now
Tell the direction.
available. Instead of trying to control your life, you're now available to be used to bless yourself in the biggest,
Right.
best possible way you don't even know yet.
Instead of sitting on the couch and going, I'm just waiting for someone to dump it on my lap.
Exactly. Exactly.
So how, Marina, would you know the difference between inspired action versus your story, your core story?
Yes. If you are doing it to get something, it's going to be from mechanism.
Okay.
If you're doing it to get something, and that's the key. And how often do we as human beings do stuff to get stuff? I will love you so that you will love me. Right?
Yeah.
I will do this thing so that I can get all this money. And yeah, I get we're in a society where we do need to work for money at this point. But if you were to use this process, your actions might come through completely different, and you might be in a completely different job that you don't work half as much and get more money for, right?
And that you love,
And
maybe
that you
something you
love,
enjoy.
something you really
Yeah.
actually enjoy, right?
Yeah.
Instead of having to go every day to that job you hate.
Yeah. Right. This truly is a way of being, a way of feeling, and a way of living that is so much it's magical compared to the drudge of working, working, coming home, sleeping, working, coming home, sleeping.
And having mediocre relationships
Yeah.
that aren't satisfying and fulfilling.
Yep.
And then blaming everybody else because you think it's their fault.
Yeah. I've heard so many times young people, girls saying statements like, all guys out there are jerks, or all guys want is this. And it's like, really, you're attracting that. I mean, that's coming from in here in your story. It's just interesting how we just walk around in our stories so much. Our whole life sometimes is dictated by our stories.
Mm-hmm. I know, until they're not.
Yeah.
And then once we
Yeah.
can free ourselves from our own mental prison that we hold ourselves in, right? Like we're believing this lie. And every time we believe the lie, it's like we put another bar in our prison cell, and we cage ourselves even more and more and more. But it doesn't need to take 40, 50 years to undo the bars of our prison. All we need to do is recognize the bar is a lie. The bar is an
An
illusion.
illusion.
It's
Yeah.
not even freaking real. And we're keeping
Yeah.
ourselves in prison by something that's not even real.
Wow.
And once we can see through that lie, those bars evaporate and we're free. And it can happen relatively quickly if we work the process, right? If we're able to do really two major things: presence and love.
Yeah.
Presence and love.
I love it.
Me too. Me too. Me too.
I had asked my class, the people that I'm working with, or that are working with me, we're all working with each other, but I'd asked them to ask questions that I could ask you that pertain to this liberation. And I didn't give them enough time. So maybe as you guys watch this video, ask the questions under the video.
Yes.
Or even send me a personal message or send a message if you don't feel like asking a personal question underneath the video, but
Yeah.
questions are welcome and comments.
Please do. Once we get enough questions, then what we can do is create a whole video just answering people's questions. And that's powerful. That's so
Yeah,
powerful because the questions that I would love for people to ask are like your everyday questions. Like, what
yeah,
about when my husband does blah, blah, blah,
yeah,
or my child does this and this and this? How do I work this? How do I do this? How does this fit in my life? Those are the
yeah.
type of questions that can bless all of us.
Right, right. Absolutely. I think that we're so in the thick of living that sometimes it's hard to stop this habit or this mechanism and do all the steps that we talked about. And truly, this does not take very long. I was
No.
only quiet for a few minutes when I was kind of going through this process. Just a few minutes, I was quiet, going,
Yeah.
I
Yep.
wonder. So thank
Yep.
you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. My pleasure. Thank you so much. This has been incredible, incredible opportunity for me to share this information that I received and be able to hopefully bless other people's lives with it.
I
So
love
thank
it.
you
And
for doing
I
this.
use these videos to go back and watch too, because sometimes we uncover things that I'm like, oh, that's brand new to me. I love it.
Like it's said in a different way, or yeah,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
dive deeper, or yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
I love it.
Yeah. Right. Thanks,
Awesome.
Marina.
All right. Thank you, Janet. And thank you to everybody who's watching and showing up
Yeah.
and wanting to improve their life. Like I want you to have what you want. And I want you to have it better than what you want. So
Mm,
thanks for showing up for yourself so that you can have that.
love
Okay, we'll
that.
see you in the next video.
All right. Sounds good.